everybody? It's Dave here and Darren over there. We are two old bloggers, been talking publicly about the Minnesota Vikings for over 2.5 decades apiece. And by talking, I mean we were blogging, giving our opinions. And we're here again one more time. I want to welcome everybody that's already showed up. We got Raymond, we've got Drewster, we got Peter. Thank you for showing up. Today we have three topics, three themes, as normal. First one is going to be the Vikings franchise made a wager. And I think they won. Darren's going to bring that one up, and we're going to talk about it. Then we're going to have This Week in Vikings Land, where we have a few topics, and part of them are the big round bellies, yes. And then we're going to finish off with your game preview, where your Minnesota Vikings go out to Seattle, where they haven't won since 2006. How many times have you heard that this week? Well, hopefully that'll change. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey there, buddy. How are things in the Great White North? And why are we doing this on a Friday night?
Because I'm driving for 10 hours tomorrow to northern Alberta for visit family or my wife's family for Christmas. So did a little bit early. Also, I think it's fortuitous because there would have been some NFL games on tomorrow. And that might have attracted, taken some attention away from two old bloggers. So we're going tonight. I feel a little out of sorts, Dave. I'm just not used to doing this, evening, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time thing. I know you and Tyler do it all the time, but I'm just not our usual time.
No, it's not. And hey, Doc, welcome to the show. Hey, David, yo, and hello, Chevy. This is one of those nights that I think where we timed it right. Not only because you're driving and I don't want you having your wife holding up the phone while you're driving in the middle of nowhere, Canada. So this works better. Well, as you can see, the thumbnail says franchise wins bet on change. Let's get into it. Theme one.
Mr. Morris. Yes.
He was a little pissed this last week.
Yes, he was. And that's the big news this week. I think the big news this week in the NFL was Raheem Morris's decision on Tuesday, I believe, to bench Kirk Cousins in favor of the 8th overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft, Michael Penix. And that's just not big news for the NFL. It's also big news if you're Minnesota Viking fans because of Kirk Cousins' history with this team. Thanks, Ray. We hope it will be safe.
Thanks, and Despair. However, I want you guys to win this weekend.
That's true. The Kirk Cousins' history with the Vikings, his 6 years as the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. What happened in Atlanta was of interest to Vikings fans there, and also of interest because how things have played out there in Atlanta, what might have been and what has been in Minnesota is of great interest to Minnesota Vikings fans. Just looking at the way things have gone there, Dave, with really, the whole thing, again, how it turned out, it just makes me break out into almost a cold sweat when I think of how different this special season so far could have turned out if Cousins was here instead of not being here. and,
Yes.
and sure, it's possible. Kevin O'Connell, the QB whisperer, it's possible that O'Connell would have coaxed better play out of Kirk Cousins in Minnesota than what Raheem Morris and Atlanta offensive coordinator Zach Robinson have got out of him. But would Cousins have played better than Sam Darnold has played? And would the Vikings still have a 12-2 record with Cousins as the number one guy? That seems unlikely when you see how Kirk Cousins is still struggling to move freely on that surgically repaired Achilles on his foot, and still struggling, I think, in large part because of that Achilles, is still struggling to drive the ball with velocity down the field. And with the Vikings having Darnold's mobility this year, Dave, and especially the tremendous arm strength he has and his confidence in it, that has been critical to the Vikings' offensive success in 2024. So it's pretty hard for me to imagine the Vikings offense with Cousins under center, as he is right now this year, would be as effective with Cousins as it has been under Darnold. So looking at that, general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell, the two main drivers of this quarterback decision, I think they deserve a lot of credit for moving on from Cousins, deciding to draft J.J. McCarthy with the 11th overall pick, and also identifying Darnold as a guy who could thrive in Minnesota if given a chance. And I think, the plan has worked almost to perfection. The only blemish is that, of course, and Adofo-Mensah and O'Connell are not in control of this, is that with McCarthy tearing his meniscus, he hasn't been able to suit up at all this season, which is a blow to us who wanted to have a look at it. But I think, but that, again, that wasn't under their control. And that's really been the only blemish. But I think it is fair to mention, Dave, with this the plan, is that I think the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell did benefit from a bit of luck here in how this all played out, because we don't know exactly. I didn't see anything official. We don't know what the Vikings offered Kirk Cousins in the offseason when free agency hit, or whether they offered him anything at all. We do know that Kevin O'Connell, with the comments he made when he was asked about it a few times in the offseason, he seemed to be pretty keen on bringing Kirk back. He loved Kirk. He loved what he did for the Vikings while he was with Kirk. And I think that he would have liked to have brought Kirk Cousins back. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was open to that, but I think the lesser comments, he didn't get to talk about it as much, or didn't want to talk about it as much, didn't make himself available to talk about it as much in the offseason. But his comments suggested that he was open to it, but not as keen, I think, as Kevin O'Connell. And it was only Kirk Cousins was only coming back if it was on the Vikings' terms. And so the one rumor I heard was that the Vikings offered Kirk Cousins a 1-year deal for a significant amount of salary. Cousins had other market for services besides Minnesota, and he ended up taking more years, more guaranteed money with Atlanta, something that any one of us would do. So I'm not knocking Kirk for that. He made a business decision, and the right one for him and his family. But what if things had turned out a little bit differently? What if Cousins felt like, Minnesota, I'm here and Kevin O'Connell, and we've got a great relationship. I've played very well under him. He's brought out the best in me. I've got a great offensive infrastructure to work with. What if Kirk Cousins had looked at that and said, I'm not going to move. I'm going to take the Vikings offer, the 1 year, bet on myself, and then we'll reassess in 2025. Well, things I think would look a lot different for the Minnesota Vikings if that had been the case. Again, if Cousins had taken that offer, if it had actually happened and been here for 1 year, and the Vikings apparently told Cousins as well that there's 1 year deal was on the table, but they were also upfront that they were going to draft the quarterback for the future to eventually replace him. So they were upfront about that allegedly. So, but if Cousins had been okay with that, we'd be looking at a much different season, Dave. Cousins would still be limping. Yeah, if that. Cousins would be limping around. He wouldn't be able to hit those tight windows with his throws that you see so often in the NFL that quarterbacks have to hit. And if they can't, it really limits your offense. And yeah, we'd be like, 7-7, 6-8 at best. No shot at the NFC North title, no shot at the number one seed in the NFC, and very little shot at a wild card spot. So, again,
much less being talked about as a Super Bowl contender.
Indeed, Dave. So that again, this plan, how Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell they orchestrated it. It's worked to perfection. But fair to say that sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. In this case, I think there was a little bit of both there. But I don't know, Dave. Can you believe how well this has turned out for the Vikings? What was your best case scenario when it turned out that Cousins was not going to return? We drafted JJ and signed Darnold to a 1-year, $10 million deal.
Right. And I figured we had talked a long time about getting that quarterback of the future. And we targeted JJ, got JJ. And I think that was the direction we were going to go. Even if he came back, he was still going to be rehabbing towards the end. And whether he started, we were talking about Kirk Cousins being a bridge quarterback. And then unfortunately, JJ tore his meniscus. He's done. I don't think we'd be lucky to be 500 if he had stayed. Now, I do believe that Kevin O'Connell gets the most out of quarterbacks, without a doubt. And that would still play towards Kirk Cousins if we had kept Kirk. He would probably do better than he's done in Atlanta. Now, last year, Kirk Cousins was the number one play-action rollout quarterback in the league, and we were the number one team to do that. It was at like 34%, and now he's in Atlanta, and he does it like 12, and they're ranked 32nd. So coaching scheme matters. Coaching matters. But I believe we made the best move because I don't believe Kirk Cousins is that, all right, guys, I'll take it. I made tons of money already. I'll come in and play for $20 million or $35, I think is what we heard. $35 million to be a bridge quarterback. I don't think he said no. And he went off and got his $100 million guaranteed. So good for him. He's been a mercenary since day one. And so he left. We get Sammy D. Sam Darnold has been just a pleasant surprise because we all knew what happened in New York and what happened in Carolina, right? And we didn't see much in San Francisco except for some garbage time. And we're like, okay, halfway through the season, he'll be swapped out by J.J. McCarthy. If not, J.J. wins it outright. Well, turns out J.J. couldn't compete because of his knee. And then Sam Darnold is developed into one of the best elite quarterbacks in the league right this year. There's talk of MVP. He's in the race now. Most likely he won't get it, but he's in the race. And this has been a magical season. And a good chunk of it is because of what Kevin O'Connell can do, what he's done with Sam Darnold stepping up and being the guy that everybody saw coming out of USC, why he was drafted 3rd overall. And it's magical. And we need to keep on enjoying this magic because who knows where it takes us. It could take us all the way to winning the division, winning the NFC, getting a first-round bye. If not, we're second-round bye at that point, and rolling it all the way to the Super Bowl. And we haven't been there since 1976. So, hey, enjoy, everybody. Enjoy. It might fall apart Sunday. But so far, and I doubt it will, but so far, it's been magical. And everybody should enjoy this because nobody picked us to win. 6.5 games. That's it. That's all they're going to win. Yeah, Scottish Bear, I think Josh Allen's going to be the one that probably wins the MVP.
When you, with just Allen on his last two games being as highly televised as they have, anybody watching those two games is not going to vote for anybody else but Josh Allen, I would think. And the way he played the last two games, it's hard to argue.
Right.
Some of the crap he was pulling off against the Lions was unbelievable.
And so it's been wonderful. And I do believe it's KOC that has brought out the best in Sam. He brought out the best in Kirk. And Kirk's now not getting the best brought out of him again. So it's part sports psychologist, part coach, schemer, all that. I'm just happy. I'm happy the way it went. And when we heard this week that Cousins was being benched, his career's not over unless he chooses it to be. There are enough QB-needy teams that he will probably be traded and signed on somewhere.
And I've known a couple of people, they're not professional athletes, but they tore their Achilles, and it really took them a year more to get back to where they were before they tore their Achilles, to where they felt they moved around like they did prior to tearing the Achilles, and also having the confidence to feel that they could move around like they did prior to the Achilles. These are just run-of-the-mill, weekend warrior, recreational athletes, but still, I think that Cousins does not look like himself. Has not looked like himself all season, even as immobile as he was in prior to that. He looks even more so, and we've seen numerous film studies of people showing how he's not leaning into his back foot and almost has it off the ground when he's throwing at times. So, and he's scared to plant on it and drive off it. Maybe in 2025 that he doesn't have that issue anymore, and he plays a little bit better. Like you said, Dave, everybody needs quarterbacks, and a lot of teams need a starting quarterback. You could look at Tennessee. You could look at, depending on how things go, a lot of teams.
Oakland. There's tons of them.
Yeah, there's tons.
There's half the league.
And if they can get a guy like Kirk Cousins, even if they don't guarantee him a starting job, at a bargain basement price, because he's already got 80, whatever left over,
right,
guaranteed.
It's guaranteed. He could do the Russell Wilson type deal of, pay me $1 and I'll come play.
Yeah. So I imagine the Falcons are going to try pretty hard to trade Kirk at the end of the season, and they're not going to get very much for him. But I think that they will find some market for Cousins' services, and just as long as they're eating, with them eating most of the salary, right?
Salary. So, yep. Hey, you never know. But you're right about taking the extra year, because Brian O'Neill tore his Achilles. Now, his was a partial tear, had surgery, and last year he was okay coming back from it. And this year he's been out of this world. So, all right. Well, that ends theme 1 and brings us to theme 2. This week in Vikings land.
Yes, sir. I'm going to dive into about 4 topics. Most of them revolve around, like you said, the big round bellies on the offensive and defensive side of things, Dave. First one we're going to get to is Dalton Risner. Is he actually playing well? The Vikings, the starting 11 on the offensive and defensive sides, Dave, it's been pretty steady. Very little movement there, other than a injury replacement, a game here or a game there. But the one big, players haven't been shuffled, haven't been replaced for the most part. Substituting in a guy who's underperforming for one that the coaching staff feels might be able to play a little bit better. Except the big move was about a month ago when the Vikings decided to bench Ed Ingram at right guard and replace him with Dalton Risner. Now, we debated this on the show when it happened and a little bit after. Tyler, yourself, me, Jonas weren't sure that this was the right move. Thought maybe the Vikings were overreacting a little bit, and not really trusting the PFF grades that Ingram continues to get. But Matthew Collar mentioned in one of his stories earlier this week that Dalton Risner has not allowed a sack in 5 starts, or not been credited with allowing a sack in 5 starts. Now, I think if you watch the film, you would see some miscommunication in assignments. You could probably credit to Dalton Risner leading to pressure and sacks from Sam Darnold. But anyway, not been credited with a giving up a sack so far in 5 starts, which is very good. Last week, he had an 81.1 Pro Football Focus pass blocking grade. Collar didn't say what his run blocking grade was, but his pass blocking grade was very good. 81.1 is excellent. And right now he's 21st among PFF guards with at least 300 snaps in pass blocking, whereas Ingram was 70th out of 81 guards with at least 300 snaps in the pass blocking grade. So if you're and the usual disclaimer about PFF and the quality of its gradings apply here, but again, this is pretty much oftentimes the only outlet we have that judges, goes that in depth
individual linemen
and how they're doing. So that's why we use it a lot. And they think that Risner, particularly in the pass blocking, has been pretty good. Now, I have a bit of trouble buying that because the Vikings offensive line, I thought, did not pass block very well against the Bears Monday night. And they struggled for about 3 quarters against Atlanta the week before, and Atlanta has the worst pass rush in the NFL. So are the Vikings really – I haven't noticed a big difference or any difference in the Vikings' play on the offensive line since Risner came in after Ingram got benched. But I guess what has been noticeable in a good way was that the last 2 games, and this comes with the running game, Dave, which is very encouraging, I think, is that the Vikings against Atlanta and then against the Bears, they have executed 2 closeout drives, basically leaning on the running game to close out those games with getting Aaron Jones for a large part and Cam Akers pounding the rock and having the offensive line lean on the defense and beat up on them physically in open holes. And they've been able to do that. And I think that's very encouraging because you need that, I think, going into the playoffs. And this comes with Risner in there, who's considered a poorer run blocker than Ingram. So, hey, maybe he is making a difference. The Vikings keep on winning here, so they're going to continue to roll with Risner, and Ingram's going to continue to stay on the sidelines, or at least at one time a couple of weeks ago, he didn't even dress.
Right. Well, I do believe it's Risner loses pass blocks slowly, whereas Ed, if he lost, it was quick.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't give time for Sam to move around or adjust or do whatever for a lot of time. A lot of that, because it was like, oh shit, there he goes.
Yeah.
Whereas Risner is punch lean, fall back, I'm in your lap, Sam. But did you throw the ball yet? And that's the difference. Now, I've said before, if you could combine both traits into one guard, you'd have probably an elite guard. The strength and the punch and the aggressiveness of Ed Ingram, and then the smarts and the delay of Risner, you'd have a heck of a guard. But we're having to pick this one over that one and that one over this one, and it turns out Ed loses. So Ed's going to have to make it up somewhere. And if it's not here next year, it's going to be someplace else, because I've gone ad nauseum on how short of skilled linemen there are in this league, and he's adequate. Now, our O-line, if you look at the offensive O-line metrics, whether in DVOA or PFF, they all have us around the middle. Ranked 15th-ish. So we're average. We haven't been average in, what, a decade? Well, at least since 2017. That one was ranked higher. But part of that was because of a mobile quarterback. But we haven't. It's been a problem. And we've always been down near the bottom. Well, now we're average. And that goes into this magical season as well, because they have contributed.
They have. I think with the amount of time they're asked to hold up blocks on pass plays in particular, I think they've held up pretty well in a lot of games and been able to give Darnold the time he needs to wait for those longer developing routes and those guys to get open or sort of open so he can fire it in there 30, 40 yards down the field. Well, not even that. Even the 15 to 20 yard throws take time a lot quicker than it does for a lot of teams where they just snap, throw it out at the line of scrimmage to a wide receiver, have two other wide receivers block plus pull a lineman.
Yeah, hoping for yak.
There's no way you're going to get a sack on that on that kind of a pass play. But the Vikings don't run those plays very rarely.
Kevin O'Connell dreams of explosives. And I heard a stat this week, and it was either 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 8, but it was under 10. Every play, he's going to get at least one explosive. So out of every 8 plays, he's going downfield at least once or 6 plays. And if you think back to the games we watched, he's always aiming at guys that are 15, 20 yards downfield. So as the primary receivers, not the checkdowns. The checkdowns is TJ Hawkinson going across the middle. And sometimes CJ Ham or Aaron Jones out in the flat. But that's it. They're always... He's looking to go deep. If he scores on 4 plays, that'd be it. We'll run the next drive. But that's Kevin O'Connell, I think, his thinking. I think that's his philosophy of football. Let's get the explosives. If we win on the explosives, we win. And by far, it's working this season. And he took so long to convince Kirk into doing that. So, hey, I think it's good. Now,
yes,
off to the next big round, Belly.
Well, yes. We talked about Risner seems to be playing, at least according to some outlets, playing pretty well. And on the other side of things, Blake Brandel is not playing well. Pro Football Focus gave him a below 50 grade last game. He's now had below 50 in 3 straight games, according to Pro Football Focus. And, I thought that Brandel at the start of the year, he was looking pretty solid. And the move, having him and moving him from tackle to left guard, the experiment seemed to be working early on in the season. Well, lately, I'm noticing missed blocks, missed assignments, giving up a lot of pressures. He's struggling out there, and as the season goes on, and that is not good news for Brandel or the Vikings. So I think that the grades that he's getting are an accurate reflection of his play of late. And that's a problem, Dave, because it really casts doubt into whether Brandel is the long-term solution at left guard for the Vikings. We don't think Risner is the solution at right guard or Ed Ingram. And if Brandel isn't the solution at left guard, it makes you wonder. Now, unlike Ingram, I don't think that Brandel's in danger of getting benched because I don't think the Vikings have like an option that they're comfortable with replacing Brandel for. I don't think they're going to switch Ingram over to left guard. He's been right guard the whole time he's been here, and they just benched him. So I don't know who else. Dan Feeney is a center. He has played guard at times in his career, but he's also
maybe.
Jurgens is a rookie. Partly a center, but also a guard. He has that flexibility, but he looked overmatched a lot of times in the preseason, and that was the preseason, not against starters in the NFL. So I think Brandel's in there for good or ill. Hopefully he can bounce back and have a strong late season surge. But I think the situation with Brandel and concerns about him being the long-term solution at left guard, and the whole up in the air situation with Ingram Risner. Risner's only signed for a year anyway. Probably doubtful that he'd be brought back. Ingram, will he be on the team next year? It really just, I think, once again, hammers home that the Vikings have got to in the offseason. Can't do anything about it now, but in the offseason, they have to invest, particularly in free agency, because we don't have a lot of draft picks yet. In free agency, we have got to invest in the guards positions and do something to bring in some better talent there.
Yeah, and you want free agency because they've already gone through that first 3-4 years worth of development. That's so key. You don't want to waste or hinder a Super Bowl window, whether it be with Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy, with developing too many linemen at the same time. So, if you can get a veteran guard, what is it, Smith from...
Well, yeah, like we've talked about Trey Smith. We need to sign a plug-and-play guy in free agency at right guard or left guard. I don't care which one, but we have to do it at one of those positions and really solidify that. Because I think Garrett Bradbury, for all his faults, has been pretty good this year a lot of times. Still gets overpowered in pass blocking, maybe too much, but you could do a lot worse than him. And his PFF grades are the best I think they've ever been, if you believe that. But at
they've
the
been
guard
dropping off too.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the guard spot, we need some upgrades. And I think there's, at least in a couple of cases, it's going to cost us, but the upgrades are there. Just a matter of whether we can get the guy to sign on the dotted line.
Convince them, twist their arm, bring them up there, show them the facilities. Take them out to Manny's or wherever. Yes. Now, as we sit here and grouse about our offensive line, it doesn't even compare to Seattle's, and we'll get into that in the theme 3. But ours look like super studs compared to Seattle's.
They got problems over there.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
Well, now let's switch sides of the line.
We do want to talk about Dallas Turner. Of course, he's been a talking point on this show and on just about every show or writer that covers the Vikings. That's what happens when you're drafted number 17 overall. You're gonna attract a lot of attention. But he got a sack Monday night against the Bears. It was a hell of a move he put on there, kind of a dip under, slide, pop up, take down Caleb Williams. Broderick Jones didn't know what hit him. And then Turner almost got a sack on the very next offensive drive, just missed because Caleb Williams is so slippery, like you said, Dave. He's just a slippery guy. So it kind of made me think, we're watching Turner, again, number 17th overall pick, a lot expected of him when the Vikings selected him. And it's been a struggle for him in this rookie season. In the Giants game, of course, he got a sack in the very first game. He played 50% of the defensive snaps against the Giants. Then he hurt his knee against the 49ers, missed a game. And after that, he kind of fell out of the rotation almost completely. Under Brian Flores was barely playing him. He was getting like 5-10 defensive snaps a game, hardly playing at all. Well, lately, he's starting to get more run. Now, a little bit of that has been because Patrick Jones is a bit banged up, but I think that Flores is starting to trust for Dallas Turner more, and because he's had the last 3 games, 26 defensive snaps again, and then last week he had 33 against the Bears, which was not a season high because the season high was against the Giants. I think he had 36 defensive snaps, but almost close to a season high for Dallas Turner. And he did more with more snaps. He showed a bit more, I think, not just the sack, but throughout the game. And it got me thinking that, man, could Dallas Turner be having a late season surge like Danielle Hunter had in 2015 in his rookie season? I know that Hunter was not as highly regarded as Turner when he was drafted. He was a 3rd rounder coming to LSU and had like 2 or 3 sacks his whole career at LSU. We weren't really sure what to make of Danielle Hunter. Whereas again, Turner, 1st round pick, 17th overall, a lot expected of him. But if you look at how Hunter's game was in his rookie season, that year he actually played consistently more than Dallas Turner did in his rookie season, but he was kind of around 20 to 25 defensive snaps for the first 7-8 games of the season, not really making a huge impact. But then the last 9 games of the season, he started playing 50% of the Vikings defensive snaps. He got 3.5 of his 6 sacks in the last 4 games of the 2050 season. And by the playoffs in the Seattle game, he was a regular part of the rotation, again, playing an impact player for the Vikings as a rookie. Well, it kind of feels like Turner, wouldn't it be great if he is about to make that kind of an impact too? Because with the amount of snaps that Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel have been playing in particular, we could really use a guy like Dallas Turner to give him a blow a little bit more often and have more of an impact. And I think that would really help the Vikings pass rush, which has been a bit not as impactful the past 2 or 3 games. I think it'd be really great if Dallas Turner had that kind of Danielle Hunter late season surge from 2015. It would really help the Vikings out, and it'd be great for Turner, and it would I think, tamping down fans' worries that Turner is a bust.
Right. Well, I think we always talk about speed in the game. Things are starting to slow down. He's starting to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's normal. It took Danielle half a season before he started to get it. And I think we're going to be all right with Dallas Turner. I think we're going to be just fine. And we haven't even approached his ceiling. And we always talk about his age. He's young. He still has
21
years to grow and fill out and get bigger, stronger, all that. I think we're going to be just fine with him. But I do like the fact that he is picking it up now and getting it, and it's starting to go subliminal and click, and should be fun going into this stretch. Last 3 games of the season.
And it was also, I was reading something pointed out that Flores is using Turner as not strictly just a guy to get after the quarterback. He's dropping him into coverage a lot because he thinks he has potential to be very effective in that role. He's asking Turner to do more than just, there's a quarterback, go get him, which is often what you're asking a rookie edge rusher to do. So it could be the fact that Turner is a guy like not quite Anthony Barish, but somebody who maybe, hopefully he will, but maybe he's not always going to be a 10 to 12 sack guy because he's in coverage a lot. Or I don't know if that's the way we envision him being used, but Flores seems to think that he can be used in much more than just a pass rusher.
Yep. Flores knows.
The maestro.
Mm-hmm. Now, sticking of Flores knows, he picked this guy.
He did. Jalen Redmond. Unfortunately, Redmond is out for Sunday with a concussion. And even a month ago, nobody would give a shit if Jalen Redmond was not playing. That's different now, Dave, because he's gone from a guy who didn't even dress 3 of the first 6 games of the season. But after that, even when he dressed, he was getting like 10, 15 defensive snaps, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. A part of the defensive line rotation, but not a big part of it. Well, again, past few games, the defensive snaps are going up for Jalen Redmond, and you're noticing him flashing all the time. Tackles for the loss, batted down passes. But like he had 33 defensive snaps, and he started against the Falcons. The week before that, he had gotten 20-some, which was the most of he'd gotten. 27 against the Bears last week. And when you watch Redmond, he's noticeable out there. Like he has a way of beating his block and causing disruption in running and passing plays. He's just got a knack for it. Anticipates the snap very well, and is just able to beat the guy who's across from him with quickness and power. And he's had 6 tackles for a loss, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's kind of middle of the pack for the Vikings defensive players right now. And he's only had 161 defensive snaps, Dave. Very little. So that's pretty good. I think that, Redmond, he's become an important part of the defensive line. He's playing more than Jerry Tillery right now, almost as much as Jonathan Bullard, and getting close to Harrison Phillips' snaps. So him not playing Sunday is a loss for the Vikings in the interior, because I think he's added an interesting dimension and a guy who can really penetrate and blow up plays, something we didn't see from the three main guys, Bullard, Phillips, and Tillery, that often. He's doing it. And we know, Dave, that the Vikings need to add a difference maker on the defensive line in 2025. I think somebody who can not only be effective in the run and occupy blockers, but get after the passer and could be a problem like Chris Jones. Mm-hmm. There's only one Chris Jones, but you want a player who has that ability. Well, the Vikings are going to have to probably find that in the draft or potentially free agency if there's somebody who's available. But Redmond is most likely draft. But Redmond is a guy who has come out of nowhere, was playing in the UFL last year, got recognized by Ryan Grigson, watching a bunch of tape, advised, talked Brian Flores' ear off about Redmond and say, hey, you got to look at the tape of this guy. I think he could help us. And Flores listened to Gregson and was convinced to sign him, Redmond, just before training camp. I remember when they made this signing, Dave, we didn't even mention it on Two Old Bloggers because it was like, camp body, big fucking deal. But he has become, he probably won't even make the team. He has made the team. Not only has he made the team, he's now a starter and a good starter. So, he's a guy next year, I think, could be an important piece to this defensive line, and team him with a difference maker on there with what we've got with Harrison Phillips. It's going to help. He has helped, and he's going to continue to help.
Yeah, and you got Redmond, Phillips, you even bring back Bullard or Tillery next year. If you get that one guy, the sexy Dexy type, the whomever, the one that absolutely disrupts things, we'll be talking about how strong the defensive line is at that point.
Yes.
It won't be an issue. And by all means, he's been one of those pleasant surprises this season.
Yes.
And we should enjoy it. Now, I don't know when he got his concussion. It was supposedly late in the game, and the observers pulled him out because they saw something and said, hey, no, and yanked him. And I thought, well, if that's the case, it can't be that bad, because I don't remember anybody going, hey, ooh, he's down on the ground, whatever, blah, blah.
That's right.
Don't remember seeing him stumble anywhere or anything like that. But yet, he still hasn't cleared protocol, so he's out, as you said. Unfortunate. We'll look for him next week.
It's unfortunate for Jalen, unfortunate for the Vikings, and for Redmond. That game, it doesn't allow him to build on what he's been doing the past three and seeing if he could sustain that. Going to have to wait till the Packers game, I guess, to hopefully when Redmond will be back entering the defensive line, and we're going to need everybody we can.
Pace back then too.
Yes. Yeah. Coming at the right time with the Packers run game.
Yep. All right. Now on to theme 3. Oop, hit the button, David. The game. And I did not close out all those graphics. Doom, doom, doom. Pardon me, folks, while I shut all this down. You're going to see them in advance. Some of the people we're talking about.
Aren't they pretty?
Yeah, they're pretty. That's what Drew comes for. He loves them. I try to tell a visual story. I take time selecting them, doing my arty-fartsy thing with them, and placing them where they add to our show is the whole point. Now, the game. Sunday, 3:05 Central Time, out in Seattle at Lumen Field. Clamshell, open clamshell. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, we got that. Weather, 50 degrees at the highest, going down, winds 8 to 10, and solid rain in the forecast. It's going to be wet. And that picture is of Lumen Field. It was taken from a Philadelphia Eagles game when the Eagles were out there visiting, and they were just getting one of those Pacific water river, Sky River deals where the just dumps water. Now, I asked before the show in the remarks about Sam Darnold and rain. Heard a story this week that Sam Darnold chose, well, I shouldn't say it. Go ahead and tell it, Darren. You told me beforehand.
Yeah, well, there was Darnold was having his pro day at USC, and it was a rare rainy Southern Cal day on the day of his pro day, and they got Darnold had the option to have it rescheduled for a day when it would be nicer out. Darnold refused and said, "No, I'm going to go under the conditions as they are," and Darnold ended up killing it. And I mean, in a good way. Like, he had a great pro day, and that was, that was a feather in his cap, because he threw under adverse conditions and chose to do so, and still showed off the great arm and the great touch. The conditions did not bother him at all. Now, so Dave, your point in bringing this up is that maybe it doesn't matter what the conditions are, Darnold may be able to handle them, and he's got the arm strength. He's got big hands. I think he can handle that. So if things get kind of soggy in Seattle, and it looks like they will, it doesn't mean the end of the world for Sam Darnold and the Vikings passing game.
Correct. Now, continuing setting the table, our Minnesota Vikings are 12-2. Vegas had us at winning 6.5 games. If we win this Sunday, we will have doubled that. Seattle, on the other hand, is 8-6. They are fighting to win their division. We'll see. They've got a 35% chance to make the playoffs. It increases to 50% with a win. They are 7-1 in the last 8 meetings against us, unfortunately. Current odds are Vikings favored by 3. Over-unders 42.5. So I don't expect it a big-time scoring game. I think going with the over is probably best, but we'll see. When it comes to injuries, for the Vikings, Fabian Moreau is out. Jalen Redmond, like we said, is out. Harrison Smith is questionable with a foot. And C.J. Ham is questionable. On the other side, all these guys are backups. You have Brady Russell, a tight end, out. Travis Gibson, linebacker, out. And Kevon Wallace, safety, out. So there's your injury report from the final injury report. We'll see if our questionable guys play tomorrow. I would suspect with Hitman that he will play. I suspect that even if they had to chop off his foot, he'd still play just because he's Hitman. But who knows? We shall see. The Seattle running backs, who are both on, Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, are full goes for Sunday.
They are, and I thought that the Seahawks not having Walker lately was a pretty big loss for him, because he is an explosive guy who can rip off explosive runs. But if you look at the season he's been having, he's only averaging 3.7 yards per carry, which is pretty poor. Charbonnet has actually averaged more, even though Charbonnet is supposed to be the power back, the tough yardage guy. So. But I think Walker's a guy that you have to account for. And with the Vikings being a little leaky on the run defense the past 3 games, this will be having both of those guys playing and healthy. It's going to be a test for the Vikings defensive defense, and particularly that front 7.
From your lips to Odin's ears, Biggs. Big Rail and Dad just said Seattle can't beat us with their team. We'll see. Hey, like I said, Seahawks are in a must-win situation, so they're going to be motivated.
Well, so are we.
Yeah, I agree. We're in a must-win if we want the number one seed in the NFC. We've got to win, no matter what. So, key challenges for the Seahawks. Their offensive line has absolutely sucked.
Ass.
Okay. I was going to say balls, but anyways, either one works. All right.
Yeah.
They're bad. They have given up 12 sacks in the last 2 games or so against weaker defenses than what we have. Their interior O-line has got a 38.5 overall grade per PFF with a 28.9 pass protection grade. Now, that's the 3 interiors. So we wish we had Redmond pushing up the middle. But I still think we'll get Cashman blitzing or something. They've allowed 190 total pressures this season, which is second worst in the league. They're bad. They're really, really bad. And I think Flores is going to just absolutely blow their minds on how they line up.
Geno Smith has been sacked 43 times so far this season. Howell, in the short amount he played last week, got sacked 4 times. They had a hell of a tough time handling anything that team from Wisconsin threw at them last week. And if you watch Geno Smith play this year, he's a mobile guy. He can get away from pressure. So a lot of times he's actually saved the Seahawks offense in the games I've watched from giving up even more sacks than they have. So you're right. The Vikings have had a hard time getting home and getting sacks. I thought that their pressure was better against the Bears Monday night than it had been against Atlanta the previous week, and against Arizona even the week before that. But they just couldn't get home. But I think this is a game where the matchup favors Brian Flores, the Vikings front 7, on upping the sack total more than the 1 or 2 they've been getting the past 3 games.
And I talked about how Cashman will probably be one of the blitzers. He's not the only one. We have Jonathan Grenard. And, of course, all the edges are going to be that way. They're going to be flying at him like he's crazy. And Geno had his knee hurt last week.
He did.
And he's working through it. He's not going to be 100%. So we'll see. Was his knee as bad as Brian O'Neill? We'll get into him as well. But Brian O'Neill doesn't need to be as mobile. Brian O'Neill only has 1 big guy going after him. He doesn't have 7. So there's a big difference there. Now, Ryan Grubb, this guy, is their OC. He's going to need to have a chance, implement more rollouts, focus on a quick running game, and because the Vikings show vulnerabilities to run. We have the last couple of weeks, even though we used to be number 1. I still think we're number 1 in the run. We're 1, 2, or 3. But that's how, if they want a chance, they're going to have to beat us. So we're going to have to stop the run. Now, defensive keys for the Seahawks to win is they're going to have to, they're targeting this man.
Mr. Bradbury.
Yep, specifically on the interior line. And they want to focus on Sam Darnold, keeping him in the pocket, keeping him contained, and beating him that way. And get him under pressure. Because they look at this as interception numbers and go, wow, he's had 11. You don't realize it's only been 1 in the last, 4 or 5 games? So, now, keys to beating the Vikings defense, as they're showing it, is Zach Charbonnet and the other running back, the 1-2 punch to run it. Whether they can do that, they hope for a quick passing game, yak after catch, and avoid turnovers. Well, what's our defense good at? generating turnovers.
Particularly interceptions. And Geno has thrown 13 of them this year. So, which is, one of the higher, even more than Darnold has thrown, is one of the high, I think he's second or third in the NFL in interceptions thrown this year. A lot of them being thrown in the red zone too, which has been a big, big problem for Seahawks. They've been able to move the ball down between the 20s, but once they get there, Geno has been throwing bad interceptions. We know the Vikings have been one of those defenses have been bend but don't break a lot of times. So I think we shouldn't get upset if we see the Seahawks are moving the ball on our defense, but it's whether they're getting touchdowns. That's the thing or not.
Yeah, when the defense tightens up, when the field shortens. Yes. Now, advantages for the Vikings. This man. Ginger Jesus, as Sal calls him. He's having an exceptional year. Absolutely. 29 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. 8 games at 100-plus passer rating. Just outstanding. He's got a 4.8% completion rate over expectation. He's fourth best in the league. Number 4. Out of 30-plus quarterbacks. Number 4. He's minus 0.36 EPA per dropback, which ranks 16th. He's got a strong receiving core. This is the no-duh of the show. No shit. With Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and, of course, T.J. Hawkinson. And Addison has been kicking ass, especially in zone coverage, against zone coverage. He scored 5 touchdowns against zone coverage so far this season with a plus 36.9 EPA when catching balls in zone. Well, guess what the Seattle Seahawks run?
A lot of zone.
Zone, baby. All zone. So now, will they change it up? Almost every team has changed up their defense some way, somehow, to battle Justin Jefferson. But if you go, single man on, least on Jefferson, that's going to leave people open. And that's where Sam Darnold comes in. Get the right read. Hey, I got double, triple team on JJ. Where's Addy? Oh, there he is. Touchdown. Addy's blocked 2. There's TJ over the middle. 15, 18 yards. Yes. All right. So it is what it is. Now, when we talk about injuries that weren't quite reported, Brian O'Neill, we knew he came out with a knee injury, a weird roll-up. Mm-hmm. There was complaining about, that was a leg whip. I wouldn't have thrown the flag on it. It wasn't intentional. And came back in, then went back out, had it wrapped, put a brace on it, wrapped, came back in and played. I think he's going to be fine. 100%? Maybe not, but we'll see.
Not 100%, and hopefully doesn't aggravate it through some friendly fire or unintentional getting run into, which is almost inevitable when you're playing along the offensive line with all the carnage that goes on there from play to play.
Mm-hmm. No, without a doubt. Now, Seahawks defense is their strength. Their pass rush with 5. They have 5 players with a pressure rate over 10%, 4th highest rate of unblocked pressures as well. Coverage is their weakness. 52.6 coverage grade for over the last month. Historic low of a 29.6 coverage grade the last week against the Cheese Weasels. I think we're better than the Cheese Weasels.
Yeah, the Seahawks defense didn't do anything well against that team from Wisconsin defensively last week. Bit surprised by the coverage marks. Devin Witherspoon, I think, is a really good corner. I think Reek Woolen, who he's been a guy who has slumped this year compared to what he did last year, and teams are kind of going after him this season. I expect the Vikings will as well. Julian Love, I think, is a pretty good safety back there, but they have had some issues.
Yeah, they only forced one incompletion last week.
Yeah.
Just one. And I'd consider Sam Darnold better than Jordan Love, and our receivers better than his.
They are, although we have quite a different passing attack than the Packers do. So more air under those balls for the Vikings than a lot of the ones that Love throws at times. Although, he likes to hit the big play too, but I think he's more consistently, they try a lot more of the wide receiver screens in the short game than we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about O'Neal being on one side. We got Robinson on the other at pass blocking. And Robinson has done exceptionally well since he's gotten here, except for one little thing. And it's popped up last week in with a vengeance. And that's his proclivity to get penalties. Stupid penalties. Self-inflicted penalties. If he can stop that again, because he went 3 or 4 games without, we'll be just fine.
Yeah, not a great sign that he had, I think, 3 or 4 pre-snap penalties last week at home when everything's quiet. And now he's going into Lumen Field where the 12th man and the loud crowd, and the Vikings are going to have to go to the silent count and all of that sort of stuff. It'd be interesting to see how Robinson and all of the Vikings offensive line, do we have a lot of pre-snap penalties that set us back on the down and distance situations, the kind of things that we don't want and the kind of things that can really ruin an offensive drive. That's going to be a big one.
Yep. Oh, I agree. Yes, Drew says that, and Brandel too. Yeah. I don't know what happened to the focus portion of it. Maybe it's girl-related, female-related, girlfriend, wife, whatever. Need to focus on football. All right. Now, our defense obviously is very much blitz heavy. Yes. It's aggressive. We rank 4th in scoring defense, holding 8 teams to under 17 points. I bet this is the 9th team. We are extremely blitz heavy with a league high 47% blitz rate on defensive snaps, 52.3 blitz rate versus pass, 38.9 versus the run. Both are number 1 in the NFL. 3 linebackers, we all know them, we love them, with more than 3 sacks. Jonathan Grenard. I wish I could find the one where he was smiling on this one. And Jonathan Grenard had 11. Andrew Van Ginkel has 9, looking for double digits, and his 3rd pick 6. Hopefully he gets it, knock on wood. And the cleanup man, Patrick Jones. Hopefully Patrick Jones is sitting at 7. He's been out. He is healthy for this game. Let him get number 8. Now, which is pretty damn good. So, coverage schemes, we primarily play 25%, a little over 25% in cover 2 and a little under 25% in cover 4. We rarely run man coverage. Now, players to watch this game. Brian Murphy, who's having a Pro Bowl caliber year, if you want to use the old Pro Bowl criteria and not the glamour voting now. But he also has experience against Seattle because he played at Arizona. So he might know an even little bit more, but we'll see. Other person to watch, Jonathan Grenard, as we've talked about, is having his career year. He's close to the NFL sack title, leading in sacks. He's not quite there yet. He's targeting a potentially limited Geno Smith due to Geno's knee being bum. We'll find out. And then, of course, Andrew Van Ginkel, who is a big play artist and is due for another big play, be it a strip sack, be it a, pick 6, whatever it is. Watch all of those 4 or those three defenders, because I think they're going to have big games on Sunday. But they're not the only ones. On the offensive side of the ball, I think Aaron Jones he's just 21 yards short of 1,000 yards. So he's going to get it this weekend, or he should. And they are susceptible to the run. And like I said, we keep going for the explosive play downfield until, KOC gets tired of it and goes, all right, Aaron, and this drive's yours. Let's go for it. And we 12 plays later, we're in the scoring again. And it gives everybody else a break. And I think that's pretty cool. And I think he's going to go over 1,000, so be it said. And then, of course, there's TJ Hawkinson. Now, TJ's back. Sam's falling in love with TJ, especially when he's in trouble. Why not? He catches the ball. He gets first downs. He always falls forward for at least like 5 yards. Go to TJ. TJ is due for his first TD of the year. I suspect that we'll see that this weekend as well. But who knows? Now, how do you know TJ is getting better? If you look on your favorite bookie site, his yards per game, or whatever, catches per game, yards per game, those type of bets keeps going up game by game. They keep expecting more and more, so you know he's playing better. And who can't star without this guy? The question is, how will the Seattle Sea Chickens play Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in all of the NFL? How are they going to defend him? Are they going to double and triple? They'll get beat by everybody else. If they leave a man on, he's going to smoke him. It's going to be a heck of a game to watch. And I'll bet, because he is infuriated over that drop touchdown last week, that he's going to try to make up for it. I like a pissed off, motivated Justin Jefferson. I think there's going to be big things out of JJ this weekend. And we already talked about Sam being good in the rain. Buddy, I think we're going to have fun on Sunday.
I hope you're right. I don't feel great about this game, Dave, but I'm pessimistic by nature. Seattle, for whatever reason, as you talked about, haven't won there since 2006. That was the Chester Taylor game, if people remember. He ran a 95-yard touchdown run and had 169 yards that game. Pretty much single-handedly won it himself. But I didn't realize this, Dave, but the Vikings, they don't play Seahawks a lot. But they played in Seattle 11 times since Seattle came into the league in 1970, whatever. They've only won there twice in Seattle. So
really?
It was not in 2006 and 1990. So
were they still in the Kingdome in 1990?
They would have been, I think, in the Kingdome in 1990. But we haven't really done very well there. I am concerned about, a lot of the rain. The rain that's going to impact both teams. There's no doubt about it. It could make for a very sloppy game, and we know the issues the Vikings have had at times with ball security this season. They create a lot of turnovers. They also turn the ball over a lot. Fumbling hasn't been an issue for Aaron Jones the last two games, which is really good. But that kind of wet field position with rain and some wind, that would kind of even
special gloves.
But I think it just makes
when they're wet.
I think that that levels the playing field for the Seahawks a bit, who aren't as good a team as the Vikings. Something to watch there. And I think really, I was talking about this before we went on, Dave, that whole which team can cause the most problem pressure-wise for the other offense is really going to be a key. Mike McDonald, the former Ravens defensive coordinator, former defensive coordinator with Michigan, he likes to send guys. And like you said, they've got a few guys that are good at rushing the passer. Leonard Williams is having a hell of a year on the interior. He was on the injury report, but he's good to go. Boy Mafe is another guy that gets after pretty good, and the second-year guy Derek Hall from Auburn has 6 sacks this year. So, but Williams has really been the guy. Even though they got beat pretty bad by the Packers last week, Williams was, I think, played quite well. He was about the only guy that played well in that game. But they're going to potentially be a problem because the Vikings have had trouble with picking up stunts, games, the communication, the recognition aspect of it. Mike McDonald is going to test that, especially with a loud crowd. DK Metcalf's getting after his fans, saying, don't sell your tickets to the Vikings, because the Packers actually out-cheered the Seahawks fans last week. Of course, they had a lot to cheer about. But they made the 12th man almost non-existent after the fireworks in the first game. So I think really, this is going to be a test for the Vikings offensive line in particular. We expect that the Vikings defense is going to cause a lot of problems for the Seahawks offensive line. But if our offense, which did not look really on point last week against the Bears, they struggled a bit, particularly Sam Darnold. So it's going to be important for the Vikings to be able to give him a little bit more comfort and security than they gave him last week against the Bears, because I felt he looked a little jumpy, a little unsettled after the first quarter, because he was getting a lot of pressure, particularly up the middle. He wasn't getting as much time as he had previous. Yeah. And he was sailing a lot of balls and more inaccurate than we've seen him in quite a few games. And I don't know whether that pinky injury that he'd had against Tennessee, that he got hit again, and it seemed like the balls kind of sailed after he got hit during the game. And we haven't heard about that being an issue. He didn't show up on the injury report this week, but we need to really let's see how Sam handles this early in the game, what he looks like throwing the ball. Is the ball coming out nice and crisp and clean with lots of zip like normal, or is it not? Something to watch for.
Yeah, and it should be. He should have that on the injury report, like Brady had shoulder on there for like 3 years. Pinky.
Yes.
So, and why we have DK Metcalf up here? One, he's a decent receiver. Two, he has been complaining about how the 12th man has been a problem. And I've been listening to podcasts all week. And Seattle podcasters, it's a big deal in Seattle. They are complaining all up and down the road that this season, the 12th man hasn't showed up. Everybody's selling their tickets. So let's hope the stadium is full of purple. And it was, who was it on Aaron Rodgers was complaining, even though he's a Jet, that he could hear on the second play of the game, "Go Pack, go." And literally last week, Seattle's offense had to go to a silent count because the Packers fans were there. Now, Packers fans always travel well. They just have bad taste in team, but hey, that is what it is.
It is.
But
I would. I was very surprising that the Packers fans were able to be that loud and noticeable last week in that game. But again, Dave, just like what happened last week, the best way to eliminate the impact that the fans can have, home fans can have on you as a road team, is you make the game tough for them early on and get a pretty sizable lead. They get quiet pretty fast.
Yes.
After that, and the Vikings are going to need to do that. I think that'd be very helpful, because they can early in the game, if they can gain control of the contest in the first and second quarter, the Seahawk fans, like all fans, will not be as vociferous as they are when they're leading by a touchdown or two, or the game is close and they feel they can make an impact.
Right. Absolutely. So, any last words there, buddy?
Well, like I said, I don't feel good about this game. It's got nothing to do with the matchups, or I do worry about the weather. Although the Vikings have been a very good road outdoors team under Kevin O'Connell, they're not the wussy Metrodome Vikings anymore who were allergic to snowflakes and any kind of elements outdoors and on grass. They have thrived pretty well. They've won in Buffalo on the road. They've won in Lambeau twice on the road. So that doesn't worry too much. I just feel like, it's got nothing to do with the matchups. I just feel like we're kind of due for a bit of stubbing our toe a bit, and we cannot afford to do that. So hoping that the Vikings continue to be focused and play their brand of ball and play it well like they have all season. And hopefully last week we were a little bit, we talked about penalties and the Vikings being so good on that. Last week they were not so good on that. And on the road, going to have to see how the penalty situation goes for the Vikings. That's another thing where we've been so good and gotten a big advantage, whereas we're getting lots of yards on penalties and not giving up yardage on penalties. It got reversed a bit last week against the Bears. Can't have that against the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's as Drew said, it's focus, and they need to stay focused. And the whole season, the rest of the season, they need to stay focused. And I think that's the key to this. We all have purple PTSD. We all think the other shoe's going to drop. We know it's going to come, and we're going to say, see. But this season's been magical so far. Maybe it's the ultimate magical. We'll see. And maybe KOC with that, not only with coaching and the scheme, but the sports psychology side of it has turned the page in Minnesota, and all that bad juju is being washed away, and they go out there and they do what they should, which on paper says we should win this one handily. So, may Odin make it so. We'll see.
Hey, I'm probably a bit of an idiot to doubt this team with the way they played this year. So, yeah,
but we're Vikings fans. We're going to do that. And as Daniel said, one game at a time. Take it one game at a time.
Oh, yeah. And KOC said the same thing this week. Throughout all the cliches you could possibly bring out when asked about looking ahead and what's in front of the Vikings, he just said, what's in front of us is Seattle. And that's what we've got to, like he says every week in those locker room speeches, our goal was to be 1-0. And that's going to be their goal on Sunday. Be 1-0 after about Sunday at 5:15 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
Yes. So, with that, I want to thank everybody that's joined us tonight. You guys absolutely rock, and thank you, George, for the super chat. We appreciate it. And SKOL to the ball is right. What do we say, Darren?
We say, SKOL Vikings, baby. Yeah, and thanks, everybody, for tuning into our show, which was earlier than normal.
SKOL Vikings! See you Sunday. When? Live at the 2-minute warning.
Yes.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!